from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
It's a pleasure to welcome you to our program today. Our topic is going to be new ways to see our children. There's much research and discussion going on, not only in this country but around the world, about children, what we're learning about them. And it's certainly, obviously, a very important topic. It's the future of our world. I'm very pleased to welcome a very qualified and very interesting person to our program to discuss this very important topic. I welcome Dr. Alexandria Delos Abrams. She has a PhD in philosophy from Columbia Pacific University. Our guest has a psychological counseling practice in Hayden Lake, Idaho. We've talked with her prior to this program, and I think you will join with me at the end of the program in indicating what a great pleasure it is to hear her comments. She has appeared on a number of radio and television programs. Our guest has also authored the book, ABC Feelings. This is an interactive learning coloring book that teaches children to identify their feelings and shows adults the importance of honoring those feelings. And I want to say once again to you, as our guest today, that it was a great pleasure to look at some of your works, and thank you for taking time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have regular panelist Janelle Burke, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho. And as is our tradition, we will ask Janelle Burke to commence today's questioning.
We had a wonderful conversation before the show, and we talked about some of the topics that interest you very much. Children, of course, being foremost among those topics that we discussed earlier. And would you share with our viewers what you mean when you say a child is a sponge, that they absorb everything around them?
They do, and I really can speak from experience from that, from seeing clients in my private practice. Because without exception, every one of them, every one goes back to a time, an earlier time in their childhood, where they absorbed, where they picked up, where they actually accepted some beliefs about life, about money, about relationships, about sex, about God, about everything. They are like sponges. They're just taking it all in. Their little neurons are just there dancing and vibrating, ready to be, they're exposed to everything. They take in looks, gestures, words, sounds. I had a client who said, "Do you know, I can feel my father's look on his face. I can feel it." And it was so impactful to her because it was a very traumatic situation. She was trying to interfere as a little child, a little 3-year-old child, in a very traumatic situation that was happening physically with a mother and father. And she said, don't. She knew intuitively this wasn't right for this to take place, this physical abuse. And she went to interfere. And her mother said, just shut up. He'll get more angry if you get in the way. Now, what did that child learn at that moment? She learned fear. She learned to shut her feelings down. Because if she did, she'd get in trouble. There'd be more violence. Her survival was at stake. So you see how important it is?
And when does this start?
You may question this, but again, I go back to my research that I have with my clients. I've had clients that have actually picked up and made decisions when they were in utero, when they were given. Many people have traumatic births. There are decisions that are made about life. I wish I could go into more stories about this, but very briefly, let me just say this to verify what I'm saying. There's a young girl who really felt as though her whole life was falling apart. When she was born, she picked up at her birth that she would be a defective child. And she she came to see herself that way because everybody in the room felt as though that would happen under these conditions. And so she picked up that label about herself, and she then started projecting that label out into the world about herself. And she drew that then to her.
But at a very early age, children also love music.
Yes, they
and
can
respond.
They definitely respond to music. They respond to kindness. They respond to higher energy and higher frequencies and joy and love. Love is the essence of who we are, you see. Love and joy and beauty. And as a child is exposed to that, kindness touches. There's been so much research out on how preemie babies, when they are touched more often than others in a control group that are not, they go home earlier. There are so many studies out that indicate that music and being exposed to gentle kindness and praise is also very powerful and instrumental in what? In growing self-esteem. That's when the seed is planted.
In your book, excuse me, in your book, ABC Feelings, I was so impressed with some reviews of that book. And one of the things that you talk about are those characteristics we can learn from children. We often think about adults teaching children, but reverse is very, very important.
Yes.
If you would elaborate upon that comment, and secondly, I would love for you to go through those particular characteristics that they do teach us, such as patience. If you would share that with particularly our parents who are watching our program.
Oh, what they teach us as little beings, what they teach us, it goes on and on. I think one of the greatest lessons that they can teach us, that they do teach us, is unconditional love and trust. And they teach us how to play and be a child again. Because somehow or other, that got shut off in us. We became boring adults, and we became serious and thinking, oh my gosh, I have to earn a living, and I have to get the right career, and I have to have the right house and the right car to have the right status. And we lose that sense of joy and resiliency and playfulness. Do you know what I did one time? It was so much fun. I was walking down the street with my husband and my daughter, and I was getting very playful. And I started jumping on the curb and off of it and dancing around a water fountain and just doing a lot of fun things the children do. It's exhausting, by the way. But it was, my husband was trying to ignore me, and my daughter was hysterical, and I was having a great time. Feel what it feels like to be a child from time to time. Skip, play with a yo-yo, go out and fly a kite. I think that's one of the greatest lessons that they teach us, to not be so serious.
Along with that, you indicated in your works that every child is unique.
Yes.
We all have a lot to learn about this process, even worldwide, in solving problems. Would you talk a little bit about the uniqueness of each child, how we need to recognize that, how we need to accept that? Am I correct that sometimes in the rearing of children, parents will try to have conformity and uniformity for each child when there is great differences and uniqueness to each?
No fingerprint is alike. No snowflake is alike. It's such an amazing concept, but it's true, because we're just all made so uniquely special. And we have our own gift that we bring to the world in that specialness. I sort of liken it to a puzzle, Paul, that and Janelle, when we take a piece of the puzzle and it has its own shape, and when we look to see where that piece goes in the puzzle and it fits in just perfectly, the puzzle then becomes whole. Well, within each piece there's wholeness too, you see. And so as we take our role in our life, and when we listen intuitively as a parent and are guided intuitively, how we can raise that child and mold that child, not according to our will, but according to what is best for that little being in there, so that they can fulfill their place in the world by making their own special contribution. It's beautiful if we can listen to that. And to do it, I think we need to get our ego and our will out of the way. And one of my most favorite quotes is from Carl Jung, who said that there is nothing that affects a child's life more than the unfulfilled life of a parent. It's a very powerful statement.
And that evidence is there at a very young age. 2 or 3
Very
children in
young.
the same family, and they're operating and acting very differently. And to recognize that is very crucial. Let's suppose one does not, and one tries to mold them into the type of being that they aren't. What are some of the consequences that one faces for doing that?
Stress. That's what I see in front of me right now. And I just trip out to a time, a memory of when I was at a booth one time at a conference. And the man came by and I'm talking to him about ABC feelings. And he said, you know, I would love to do something in the area of child care and working in psychology or social work. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, I'm a printer. I said, do you love being a printer? He said, I hate being a printer. And I said, well, why are you? He said, well, my father was a printer, and I just thought that I should do that, and that's what I was exposed to, but I never really wanted to. And he said, I remember my father saying, don't even think about doing anything differently. I've heard that many times, too.
Janelle Berg.
One of the things that children do, and it's so wonderful, is play.
Yes.
And that tells us a lot about them. What about child's play? What's healthy and what's not healthy when children are playing?
Well,
what kind
of course,
of activities?
this is only my opinion. And just from, again, what I have understood through my education and training and experience and research and working with clients and being exposed and working with children, daydreaming. Children love to daydream. And how many times do we as adults say, what are you doing? You're not doing anything productive. Go do something. Part of our nature is doing, but part of it is being also. So when we can allow a child to be and express, to play with dough, make cookies, play in anything that's tactile, that can use their hand, they can use their hands, and they can pretend and make believe. I saw a little girl and she was watching the opera on television, and she was all dressed up, and she was watching the opera and she's singing, and then he came and said to her, and the mother said, how can you understand what they're saying? It's in Italian. And she said, I don't understand it, but it's more fun. I get to make it up. See, that's what they have. They're so alive with joy and imagination. And in the moment, children are in the moment. They don't want to wait 15 minutes. They're about right now, and see, that's what else that they can teach us. We're always either planning in the future, or else we're dragging the past behind us. I have a wonderful clock. Actually, I have it on today. And every number, instead of a number, it says now. So right now, it's now after now. If we could only live more present, you know.
And what things are maybe not good for children? What can we do that stifles them?
I've definitely been
stress?
exposed to children who have had a lot of anxiety with a lot of the games, the video games, and where parents have stopped them or prevented them from some degree, decreased their hours on them, and they have seen remarkable changes in their child. And of course, I mean, it's said over and over, we know this, the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of acts of violence that children see on television by the time they're very young. Now, this isn't play. We can't let our children sit in front of a television set to be exposed to anything as a babysitter. We have to take responsibility for what they're watching and what they're doing with their time.
How about too many activities?
Oh, that's a good one too. Wow, some schedules of children are more active than many adults. First you go here, then you go there, and this carpool and that. It's exhausting to a child. And what happens? They forget about playing. When do they have time to play and to be a child? To be.
Something else we talked about prior to the program was when children are particularly very young and in those formative years that are so crucial,
yes,
that oftentimes they do not get held, they don't get to hear music or be talked to. Some national studies have shown lately if you put a child in front of a television, even though there's a sound and noise there, that it has no effect compared with actual human communication. So would you share with us the dangers of not doing that with children, or what one should do to help a young child?
I think some of the dangers is that they grow up and they form their relationships based on that. When they have been exposed to beliefs that are supportive, when they have been exposed to the truth. I had one client, and he went home and he said to his mother, "I'm so excited." He said, "It's really fun to tell the truth." Because that's what the protocol is about that I use in my practice. It's about just honoring the truth. So as children are exposed to beliefs that are, as I say, supportive, it doesn't always mean that you have to praise your child with everything that they do. Again, you're truthful about it. And you teach them integrity. And how do you teach it? By being the role model. That is the best teacher ever. If they see mom and dad fighting with each other and mom goes out of the room and dad goes storming off someplace, what does it teach them about communication? And even if that does happen, because we're human and those things do happen, it's never too late to come back and say, "You know, sweetie, Mommy was so upset. I just didn't know what to do with myself. I just felt like I wanted to run away." It's about telling the truth again. A child will understand that. A child doesn't understand lies. Because again, that's not the essence of who we are. The essence is truth and pure love and joy.
But they cannot learn those lessons from you if one does not have time for them.
That's right. And many of these little ones are in child care from 7:30 in the morning. They're picked up at 6 o'clock in the evening.
I want to get into some mechanics of your ABC feelings. I have 3 cards here that we're going to show, and I'll start the first one. They stand for a letter of the alphabet, and this one is the R. And would you share with our viewers how you use these cards? And I know that you've had some experience with children learning the entire alphabet from this viewpoint and making up a story for each one.
Yes, that's true. Well, R is for feeling responsibility. This can be taught and, as I say, demonstrated at a very, very young age. The little boy is feeding his fish. And what happens? The child can be asked, what would happen if that little boy didn't feed his fish?
So you got both a written message and also a verbal message.
Exactly. And here's, he's just, isn't he just loving his time with his dad? Or I would assume it's a dad. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's an uncle. Whoever it is. He's just cuddled up there so nice and cozy, spending time together, quality time together.
And that also then brings in the appreciation of peace versus
Yes.
violence or conflict.
And that's what's so beautiful, too, about these cards and these flashcards, Paul, is that on the back of them there are many activities that help the adult encourage the child. How would you be feeling if you didn't feel unique?
Mm-hmm. Well, this one is a message. We could even describe it as it teaches diversity and
Yes.
differences of people around the world.
And as we talked about earlier, when you can help a child realize that she has a very special gift that nobody else has, that is only hers, and when she listens to herself and when she communicates, that gift will be expressed to the world. Because you see, when we have communication, we have understanding. And when we have understanding, we have compassion. When we have compassion, we have LOVE.
So if you teach this early, I just hear ringing in that message, self-esteem,
Yes.
self-worth.
Yes, self-worth.
And that will go through life with the person.
It's doing something that you didn't think that you could do, having that confidence in yourself, being centered within yourself to say, I know I can do it, and I know I have one person. They say if a child has one person in their life who believes in them, they can make it through.
Let me have one more question, then I'll go back to Janelle. One cannot go back and relive a life if it's happened. And I know you have clients that are older and that's happened. But once a person's reached a certain point and they've had some bad experiences in their life, what kind of advice do you give them to recognize that and to move on with their life? I'm sure there are things that can be done to, I'll put it this way, would you react to the comment that if one recognizes the problems, and before the show I was sharing with you another consultant what he did with some of his clients, then is that on the road to recovery or to a better life?
Awareness is definitely the first step, but it takes some participation in your life. You have to really have an intention, I think, to really want to improve your life. The protocol that I use in my practice is quite amazing. It's called neurophysical reprogramming, and it actually is about reprogramming the cellular structure, the memory, the DNA, and to reprogram those experiences, because we can't, see, people would say, oh, we'll have a positive attitude. And I agree, positive attitudes are great, but let's do it naturally and not put that positive attitude under a lot of toxic energy that's there, because it doesn't go away.
Thank you. Janelle Berg.
Your degree is actually in transpersonal psychology,
Yes.
as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And can you explain for our viewing audience and for me what
Yes.
that means?
Oh, great. I love it. Because transpersonal actually integrates physical, mental, emotional, and the spiritual aspects of who we are. And I liken it to a chair that has 4 legs or a table. If each one of the legs represented an aspect of who we are, it functions that way, right? With 4 legs. Yes. If any one of them were splintered, badly broken, or wasn't there, how well would we be sitting on a chair? How stable would that table be, you see? So we have to recognize, yes, how well are we taking care of our body? Exercise, nutrition. How well, what's the quality of our thoughts? Change your thinking, change your life. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day. What is the quality of those thoughts? We have choice at any moment. Do we choose a thought that relates to suffering, or do we choose a thought that's going to be more supportive in that moment? We have a choice. Powerful, powerful instrument we have. The other aspect is, what are we talking about? Feelings, the emotional aspect. Do we feel our feelings, or do we stuff them? Do we deny them? Do we honor them in the child? The other aspect is the spiritual part of ourselves. And I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about, and it can be, but I'm not talking about that as that. I'm talking about creativity and beingness and connectedness and passion. That's what I'm talking about. And yes, we can take that into our religion. And anything that we do is much more highly accelerated and enlightened when we come from integrating those aspects of who we are. So it actually bridges the world of matter with the world of spirit. Transpersonal. It's beyond the ego. It says that we have an ego and we have a soul. We have feeling and we have doing. We have reason and we have energy that works together. We're holistic beings.
Then I would like to ask you, too, about intuition. How does that work? When I have a really great intuitive feeling, pro or con, about something, should I be in contact with that feeling?
Well, it is our greatest instrument. At birth, we're given this as a tool to function. in this adventure called life. We have our 5 senses, but our 6th sense, our intuitional sense, will really guide us and will never take us astray. And I mean, it's in many ways, I could even refer to it as our common sense. But we'll get those hits. And many times we listen to them, many times we don't. Why don't we listen? We aren't taught when we're children to listen. We aren't taught about our intuition to listen to ourselves as the authority. We're taught to look elsewhere for the wisdom. The wisdom is right within us. And who has said this? Emerson, Thoreau, Greek philosophers. It's nothing unique. It's in the Quran, it's in the Bible, it's in the Bhagavad Gita, it's in the Talmud, it's everywhere. The wisdom is within us. Why don't we teach this to our children? They do in India. They teach them how to relax and to meditate and to quiet and go within. The answers come then. The answers are of pure truth. I did my thesis, on the subject of intuition, the infallible teacher of truth. And it was a very fascinating experience because I certainly learned a lot more about it, but it's a marvelous tool.
You've been so articulate in dealing with the issue of energy and how that affects humans and their health and their lifespan. We see negative energy, we see positive energy, and people have a lot of choices.
Yes.
Give us we have a short period of time left, but give us an idea of how, if you have a meeting of negative and positive energy, is negative or positive energy more powerful, or that is, can you endanger your positive energy by being exposed to a lot of negative energy?
Oh, I think you can. I think you can. You have to we do have will. And if we're, again, through our intuition, if we can feel, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right here. I choose not to be in this. We can really leave that situation.
I've been given the notice that we're out of time.
Okay.
Dr. Dallas Abrams, we thank you so much for being here. And I do want to invite you back. I know Janelle joins me. We'd love to have you back.
Thank
you are
you.
so informative and stimulating.
Thank you so
with
much.
your comments. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought that you would enjoy this program. I'm sure you have. As we entered it, I said that would be the case. I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time. We'll discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.